Blackhead prevention works best when it is gentle, consistent, and realistic, because blackheads usually do not appear all at once, but tend to form gradually as excess oil, dead skin cells, leftover sunscreen, makeup, sweat, and ordinary daily residue collect inside the opening of the pore, and slowly form a compact plug that darkens after exposure to air. So, the smartest long-term approach is not to attack the skin with force, but to keep the skin calm, clean, balanced, and less congested over time. A simple routine is often more helpful than an aggressive one. Cleanse the face in the morning and again at night with a mild cleanser and lukewarm water, because very hot water can strip the skin, leave it feeling tight and reactive, and create that frustrating cycle in which the face feels both oily and uncomfortable at the same time. Use clean fingertips rather than rough washcloths, harsh scrubs, gritty exfoliants, stiff cleansing brushes, or repeated friction, especially around the nose, chin, and forehead, where blackheads often gather most easily. If sunscreen, makeup, or heavier skin products have been worn during the day, remove them thoroughly but gently in the evening so residue does not remain on the skin overnight. Choose non-comedogenic products when possible, and be cautious with very heavy oils, greasy balms, thick styling creams, or pomades that can migrate from the hairline onto the forehead and temples. Moisturizer still matters, even if the skin feels oily, because over-cleansed or dehydrated skin can become irritated and unbalanced, and a light moisturizer often helps the skin feel calmer and more comfortable over time. Daily sunscreen also matters, because protecting the skin from too much sun supports overall skin health and reduces the temptation to overuse strong products out of frustration. Small hygiene habits matter too. Change pillowcases regularly, use clean towels, wipe down eyeglasses and phone screens, and try not to rest the face in the hands for long stretches. If you sweat after exercise, yard work, commuting, warm weather, or a long day outdoors, rinse or cleanse the skin as soon as practical, so oil and residue do not sit on the surface longer than necessary. If scalp oil tends to move onto the forehead, wash the hair regularly and keep heavier hair products away from facial skin whenever possible. Some people benefit from gentle leave-on ingredients such as salicylic acid to help keep pores clearer over time, and some do well with a retinoid if their skin tolerates it, but stronger is not always better, and steady use is usually more helpful than jumping from one harsh trend to another every few days. Pore strips may remove some surface debris temporarily, but they do not stop future blackheads from forming by themselves, and repeated rough use can irritate sensitive skin, so it is usually wiser to focus on steady daily habits instead of chasing quick fixes. Avoid squeezing, scraping, pinching, or picking at blackheads, because that can cause redness, swelling, irritation, broken skin, and lingering marks while doing very little to prevent the next clogged pore from forming. It also helps not to inspect the face too aggressively in magnifying mirrors, because normal skin texture can begin to feel like a major problem when it is really just part of being human. Wash hats, pillowcases, and anything that rests against the forehead regularly. Keep makeup brushes and sponges cleaner than many people remember to do. Be thoughtful with thick or greasy products that stay on the face for many hours, especially in warm weather. Try not to switch products constantly out of frustration, because skin often responds better to calm consistency than to panic. If a new product burns, stings strongly, or leaves the skin much redder, drier, or more uncomfortable, reduce it or stop it and return to a simpler routine. Regular sleep, a balanced routine, lower stress where possible, enough water, and patient habits support general well-being and may also help the complexion look steadier. If clogged pores become painful, inflamed, widespread, or resistant to gentle home care, guidance from a licensed dermatologist is much wiser than escalating with rough self-treatment. In the long run, blackhead prevention usually comes from mild cleansing, thoughtful product choices, less friction, cleaner habits, and enough patience to let the routine work quietly. And maybe that is one reason older people often appreciate practical advice in the first place, because after enough years, most people discover that very few things improve because somebody attacks them dramatically, while a surprising number improve because somebody notices what matters, keeps the routine simple, and refuses to let a perfectly manageable inconvenience turn into a full public production, which is exactly what happened in the small Wisconsin town of Briar Fork. On the first cool Saturday of September, when 79-year-old Martha Evelyn Pritchard put on a soft blue cardigan, checked that she had peppermints, tissues, and a pen in her purse, and boarded the senior center shuttle, expecting nothing more adventurous than a genealogy brunch at the county archives building, where she planned to drink coffee, eat a respectable egg casserole, and maybe learn whether her late husband's people really had come through Kentucky, or whether that had simply been one of Uncle Vernon's more colorful theories, but instead found herself, before noon, at the center of the finest civic confusion the town had produced in years after the Archives Society, the annual Dachshund Derby, the Midwest Pickle Enthusiasts Fellowship, and a regional tax preparation seminar for retirees all ended up booked across the same historic square, because one volunteer copied last year's spreadsheet, one board member approved it without glasses, and one assistant thought DD on the calendar meant donor dinner instead of Dachshund Derby. Martha Evelyn had spent 38 years as the front office secretary at Briar Fork Middle School, which meant she trusted labels, schedules, clear handwriting, practical shoes, and women who carried extra paper napkins more than she trusted enthusiasm, decorative arrows, or any person who said, "It'll sort itself out" in public. She lived in a neat white farmhouse with green shutters, one creaking porch swing she refused to replace because it still told the truth, and a freezer containing one emergency meatloaf, one emergency pound cake, and at least 4 soups labeled in thick black marker, because supper should never surprise a grown adult. She was widowed, but not lonely in the theatrical way people sometimes imagine. She had one daughter in Madison, one son in Des Moines, grandchildren who still called to ask how long a roast should sit before carving, a church with a highly disciplined casserole culture, and 3 close friends who met her every Saturday morning at Jenny's family kitchen for coffee, toast, and the serious responsibility of identifying local foolishness before it had time to spread. Those friends were Loretta Jean Bailey, age 74, retired beauty shop owner, loyal to coral lipstick, patterned scarves, and the idea that public standards were the thin thread holding civilization together. Calvin Rhodes, 81, retired hardware store manager, suspicious of unstable card tables, decorative stools, and all rolling objects with ambition. And May Ruth Ellison, age 76, widowed, former church pianist, soft-spoken and dryly funny, the sort of woman who could say something in the tone of a weather report and still leave the whole table laughing 10 seconds later. The genealogy brunch had sounded harmless on paper. Family history displays, church recipes, old photographs, maybe one county clerk talking too long about census records. That was fine. But over breakfast, Calvin held up the little flyer and said, "This says Heritage Brunch in the Archives Hall, but this lower corner says Wiener registration opens at 10. Loretta paused with her coffee halfway to her mouth. Wiener registration for what? May Ruth took the paper, adjusted her glasses, and said, "There's more. Pickle tasting under the courthouse awning, tax workshop in the old library, Dachshund Derby on the courthouse lawn." Martha set down her fork. "That," she said, "is not a day. That is a dare." By the time the shuttle turned into the square, they could see she was right. The old brick archives building sat on one side of the courthouse lawn under a banner reading Roots and Remembrance Brunch, while the opposite side of the square was lined with striped tents, folding tables, dog strollers, pickle jars, lawn chairs, and a start line painted in chalk that read, "Shunned-Heat 1. Between them, under the courthouse portico, a tax preparation sponsor had set up brochures, pens, and one serious-looking cardboard cutout of a smiling couple holding calculators. The sight would already have been enough, but then a breeze moved across the square and shifted a big vinyl sign featuring a cartoon pickle in sunglasses so that it flapped directly above a table of genealogy binders, like a threat from a very casual enemy. "No," Calvin said. Loretta looked at the dog strollers and sighed. "That is too much excitement for a county record office." The shuttle had barely lowered its step before a young woman in khaki pants and a burgundy polo came jogging over with the wild gratitude of somebody who had made bad choices and now saw orthopedic shoes. "Thank heaven," she said. "You're the senior flow advisors." Martha blinked. "The what?" "The Accessibility Review Panel from County Outreach," the woman said, already clutching a stack of badges. "I'm Bethany. We were told an older guest comfort team was coming to help evaluate signage, queue movement, seating, food access, shade, and restroom navigation. We have overlapping events, 3 volunteer captains disagreeing about tables, and 1 dachshund named Skip who has already escaped twice. If you're them, I could cry. Martha tried once because she was raised decently. I think you may have mistaken us for somebody else. Bethany nodded so fast it bordered on spiritual collapse. Yes, many things have been mistaken this morning, and that is exactly why I'm so glad you're here. Then she hung a badge around Martha's neck reading guest flow review and did the same to Loretta, Calvin, and May Ruth before reality could button its coat. Once they reached the square, Martha understood why Bethany looked one thought away from lying down in traffic. The coffee station for the genealogy brunch stood in the shade, but the cup sat on a table 30 feet away near the dog check-in tent. The casserole buffet blocked half the main entrance to the archives building. The tax workshop registration lined up directly across the only path to the public restrooms. The pickle tasting table sat beside the old courthouse steps, where older knees already had enough to think about. The genealogy display boards had been set on easels, so light a firm sigh could move them. And near the derby course, 3 long cords snaked across the grass toward a portable speaker, while little dogs in race bibs and flower collars prepared for what could only be described as recreational overcommitment. No, said Martha. Loretta, coffee and chairs. Calvin, tables, cords, anything on wheels, and whatever else you distrust on sight. May Ruth, food labels and lines. Bethany, stop saying wonderful every time you panic and hand me that map. What followed was the kind of quiet miracle older adults perform every day without asking for statues. Loretta moved the cups beside the coffee, the sugar beside the cups, and the napkins where hands would naturally reach them, then quietly replaced 3 low decorative stools with proper folding chairs because, as she told a volunteer in a sunflower apron, no woman over 70 should have to climb out of a chair like it's a moral test. Calvin inspected every buffet table, wedged 1 leg with a folded cardboard pie sleeve, moved the genealogy easels farther from the pickle tent, and rerouted the speaker cords around the lawn edge, so nobody in sensible shoes had to cross a trap on the way to history. May Ruth rewrote every food card in black marker, after discovering that the original cream script said things like Harvest Delight Casserole, without admitting it was tuna, turkey sandwiches, egg bake, ham biscuits, not sweet tea. That level of honesty changed the mood immediately. Martha herself widened the path to the restrooms, shifted the tax line under the library awning, and moved the pickle tasting table farther from the courthouse steps because nobody should have to navigate brine while thinking about their knees. The first senior guests arrived and visibly relaxed. The first tax seminar retirees found a place to stand. The first dachshund owners stopped circling like ships without charts. Bethany looked around as if the square had been exercised. How do you all know exactly what to fix? She asked. Because places confess, said Martha, and because nobody under 50 seems to think about coffee properly anymore. For a little while, it almost worked. The genealogy brunch began seating people inside the archives hall. The dog lineup stayed outside. The pickle club tasted dill in peace. The tax seminar retirees drifted into the library with their folders and reading glasses. Then one of the derby volunteers blew the starting whistle 15 minutes early. That single shrill blast hit the square at the exact moment a churchwoman named Mrs. Potts was carrying a tray of deviled eggs across the courthouse walk. One gentleman from the tax seminar was leaning to tie his shoe, and a child in a pirate hat, there is always one child in a pirate hat at the wrong event, decided to run toward the dogs. 7 dachshunds launched forward as one tiny, determined carpet. 1 dog stroller tipped. 1 jar of bread and butter pickles rattled. Mrs. Potts gasped. No, said half the square. Calvin caught the egg tray. Loretta scooped the child by the elbow and turned him back toward his mother like a ballroom dance he had not agreed to. Martha took the whistle from the volunteer and said, with the perfect calm of someone who had once stopped a fire drill from becoming theology, no one starts a race through eggs. The square collapsed laughing. Even the tax retirees laughed, and they had been carrying folders labeled important in red ink. The dogs were returned to the line. The pirate child was rehomed to his mother. Mrs. Potts regained her dignity. The actual race was delayed until the food had safely crossed the walk. That should have been enough. It was not, because then the Pickle Club announced free samples with the enthusiasm of a county fair preacher, and half the genealogy crowd, lured by curiosity and vinegar, drifted toward the tasting table at the same moment the first dachshund heat began, which meant one corridor of older adults carrying tiny cups of dill brine now crossed one lane of low racing dogs wearing numbers pinned to little vests. "Absolutely not," said Loretta. "Pickles left, puppies right," Martha called out, taking the spare microphone from the derby tent before anyone could misuse it further. "If you are carrying a sample, you stand still. If you are carrying a dachshund, you hold him like your reputation depends on it." The crowd obeyed. They obeyed because older adults can hear the difference between panic and authority from across a lawn. The first heat ran. The dogs did their best. One stopped midway to bark at a stroller wheel. One turned back toward its owner. One named Butterbean won in a blur of tiny commitment. The audience cheered. The genealogy guests, delayed but amused, returned to their brunch with stories already forming. Then came the tax seminar problem. The Retire Smart workshop was held in the old library room with seating for 40. But 63 people came because older Americans will always attend a free talk involving taxes if there is even a rumor of coffee. Extra chairs were fetched from the archive hall, which would have been fine if those chairs had not also been needed by the brunch crowd, when the mayor's wife arrived unexpectedly with 3 out-of-town cousins and a need to sit together immediately. Bethany came running back across the square with the face of someone living through a personal weather event. "We're short on chairs in both rooms," she said, and someone moved the folding bench to the dog tent because they wanted shade. "Of course they did," said Calvin. He marched to the dog tent, reclaimed the bench, moved it to the library, and then found 3 stackable chairs in the courthouse basement because men who spent 40 years around tools always know where extra chairs actually live. "They were by the old election signs," he said when he returned, as if that settled everything. It did. The seminar sat down, the mayor's wife got her chairs. The dogs kept the shade but lost the bench, which Calvin said was fair because they were not filing taxes. The day might still have finished decently, if not for the cardboard pickle. The Pickle Club's oversized mascot, a 6-foot foam pickle wearing sunglasses and white sneakers, had been stationed near the tasting table for photographs. It should never have been permitted near live animals, historic documents, or portable food. During the second race, as the mascot leaned to wave at a toddler, a gust of wind caught one side of the courthouse banner. The banner snapped, and the edge slapped the pickle squarely in the shoulder. Startled, the pickle stumbled backward into the genealogy easel row. One display about the Holloway family line tipped forward toward a tray of pecan bars. Another lurched toward the raffle jar for the hand-stitched quilt. The pickle, unable to see his own feet, flailed in soft horror. "No," said May Ruth, already moving. She caught the nearest easel. Martha grabbed the quilt jar. Calvin steadied the second board. Loretta rescued the pecan bars and said, with deep personal offense, "If a pickle ruins dessert in front of me, that will become his whole identity." The square erupted. Even the mascot laughed once he realized nothing had been broken but his standing. The display boards were secured with sandbags. The pickle was moved to a safer corner, where only photographs and his own choices could be harmed. The funniest part of the whole day, however, belonged to the tax seminar door prize. In a fit of sponsor enthusiasm, someone had donated an emergency preparedness tote with flashlights, shelf-stable chili, batteries, and a hand-crank radio as the seminar's attendance prize. Unfortunately, the tote was placed beside the genealogy raffle basket containing quilt tickets and recipe cards, which was itself beside the dog derby prize station where blue ribbons and pet treats were being handed out. This arrangement lasted exactly 12 minutes before a retired dentist from the seminar accidentally dropped his tax door prize ticket into the dog treat bowl. A church lady entered the preparedness drawing thinking it was for the quilt, and one little girl named Emma proudly informed everyone that she had won the batteries. "We are not drawing from confusion," Martha said, and by then the entire square had learned to love that sentence. She moved the baskets apart, labeled them in letters the size of windows, and announced over the microphone, "Blue tickets are for quilts, red tickets are for taxes, and dog treats remain for dogs, unless the rest of you truly give up." That line traveled all the way to the pickle tent and back. Even the tax lawyer laughed. Then came the gazebo trouble. The square's center gazebo had been reserved for the noon genealogy slideshow, but because all public events attract one man who believes he is helping by moving equipment independently, the portable projector cart had been rolled there early and parked on the slight incline nearest the bandstand rail. On top sat the projector, a stack of family history binders, and one sheet cake intended for the volunteers who made the event possible, which is how people always speak just before they test gravity. During the third dachshund heat, one small brown dog, named Peanut, veered off course, trotted beneath the gazebo, and wrapped his leash around the lower wheel of the cart. The owner squealed. The dog kept moving. The cart shifted 1 terrible inch toward the rail. "No," said every older adult with functioning memory. Calvin caught the cart handle. Martha grabbed the binder stack. Mayruth lifted the cake. Loretta untangled Peanut with the grace of a woman who had once separated 2 women fighting over a salon appointment without breaking a nail. The cake survived. Peanut was praised for spirit and redirected. The owner cried a little from relief. "No carts on slopes," Calvin declared to the whole county as if issuing federal regulation. No one objected. By early afternoon, the square had stopped being 4 competing events and become one giant happy tangle that only worked because older adults had refused to let it embarrass itself. The genealogy guests ended up cheering for the dogs. The Pickle Club bought raffle tickets for the quilt. The tax retirees, after hearing the laughter from outside, came out with their folders and ended up eating ham biscuits under the awning while watching Butterbean win again. The local newspaper reporter, who had originally come for a wholesome civic picture of small-town fall charm, found herself following Martha instead. "What exactly is your role here?" she asked. Martha looked around at the chairs, tables, dogs, jars, banners, signs, and volunteers finally moving as if they shared one species. "Currently," she said, "the brakes." That quote made the Sunday paper. But the true masterpiece of the day arrived at 2:30, with the sudden arrival of the county commissioner. He had not planned to attend, but someone told him there were cameras, pie, and seniors, which in election season is stronger than weather. He stepped into the square smiling broadly, shook hands in the wrong line, nearly entered the pickle tasting with the genealogy badge, and then, because there is always one man who confuses visibility with usefulness, offered to draw the quilt raffle himself. The problem was that he picked up the wrong jar. Instead of the quilt tickets, he held aloft the bowl of dog treat coupons gathered from the third heat. "And the winner is," he began. "No," said Martha, taking the microphone from his free hand and the bowl from his other one in one elegant motion. "That jar leads only to jerky snacks and public shame." The square cracked open, laughing. Even the commissioner laughed, because by then, resistance would only have been worse. The proper jar was produced. The quilt was drawn. Mrs. Pots of the rescued deviled eggs won it, which the square considered justice. The commissioner stayed for coffee and, under quiet supervision, did no further harm. By the time the afternoon settled and the shadows stretched across the courthouse lawn, everyone had begun speaking as though the whole day had been intended this way from the start. The pickle people said they always loved sharing space with local history. The genealogy ladies said the dogs added movement. The tax retirees said the seminar was better with fresh air and accidental ham biscuits. But the truth was visible to anyone honest. None of it would have worked without Martha and her breakfast table, from Daisy's, no. From Jenny's, no. From Mabel's, no. From whatever diner held them. But in that square, the exact name mattered less than the fact that they were there. Before the shuttle left, Bethany found them near the coffee station, now neat and sensible and entirely free of brine, and asked if they would consider serving on the county event review committee. "Only if no one ever again puts pickles beside genealogy," said Loretta. "And no carts on slopes," said Calvin. "And signs in black ink for actual eyes," said Mayruth. Martha added, "And no speeches before pie." Bethany agreed to all of it without 1 ounce of negotiation. Later that night, when the square had emptied, the dogs had gone home, the quilt was folded on Mrs. Potts's couch, and the pickle mascot had been returned to whatever closet held that much confidence, Martha stood at her bathroom sink and followed the same gentle routine she trusted every day. Cleanser,